Hello again, Taylor County. I'm Alex Renner with Unleashed Tiger, and I'm here with Stephanie Zucker, who's running for State Senate District 14. Stephanie, thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you, Alex, for having me back.
Great. Well, you know, we did this in the primary, and we talked a lot about things. We'll have that video available for folks. And so a lot of what we'll cover today is not going to be necessarily the same issues and same things that we've covered, but we do want to learn more about who Stephanie is and what you're about for our district. But right off, you know, knowing more about you, but what have you learned? What are you hearing when you're out on the campaign trail from the constituents in this district?
That's a great question. I have learned so much. I mean, that's really what I've been doing the last 8 months.
Okay.
Is talking to people. Knocked on, probably thousands of doors. I talked to many people, and I'm hearing a lot of the issues that we all know about: roads, drugs, education, but hearing a lot of details about how people are really struggling with those issues, how people are struggling to keep their families together, how they're struggling to, even when they're working full-time, to be able to actually support their families, struggling with addiction, struggling with opportunities. It's heartbreaking, but it's also really motivating because it is so important that our state take the lead in helping our people. So, I could go into lots of depth on any of those, but I've told that to other candidates and to anyone in legislature, anyone in leadership, anyone who works in government, that one of the most important things they could do is spend a few days just knocking doors and asking people what I typically ask people at the end of a conversation. I have a lot of issues. Obviously, they're all on my materials and a lot of things I want to work on. But I ask people, what would you like me to work on first? And that's my way of finding out what's important to them. And if everyone could do that who works in government or who desires to work in government, I think that the priorities that we're working on would really change. Yeah,
it'd be more aligned. Is there anything that when you heard some of that feedback, or as you've talked to folks in this district, I think people need to understand this district is yes, wide open. It's clear across, and so really some varying socioeconomic environments and those things. But is there anything in talking to folks that you've maybe either changed a position or just really understand things much better that maybe you thought you understood when you went into this?
Oh, definitely. When I first started, I had a little idea of what the major issues were and what some of the major issues are. But what I've been working on is finding out more details and exactly what we need from the government to change, to improve. So every time I get an opportunity, a contact that knows a lot about addiction, or a contact that knows a lot about broadband internet or the roads, I dig in and I make sure to take time to go back and meet with them at length and ask questions. And I found out, what we can do for broadband internet. There's a little company that's working up in Preston County, Prodigy, and they're putting in broadband high-speed fiber internet in rural parts of Preston County.
That's great.
So when I found that out, I was like, can I talk to you more? And I was fortunate enough that the engineer who works there was willing to sit down with me and talk to me about how their company works and what the problems are holding them back from putting it in everywhere. And there are solutions, there are things that the state government can do, specifically with identifying properly on the national. The FCC keeps maps of areas that are believed to have high-speed internet access, as reported by the companies. And those maps are not accurate at all for West Virginia. Yep. And so all you have to do essentially is submit reports to the FCC with specific data that a layperson could get if you knew what steps to take to get your download speed and your address, and report that to the FCC. And you have to go through that process for communities to get them identified as not having broadband or any internet really, in order to then have the federal government be able to give the grants that help run that high speed. So that's something that as a state, why aren't we doing that? Yeah. Why isn't our government helping coordinate that effort to make it easier then for companies to get the grants or nonprofit cooperatives to get the grants?
Great call.
That's something, there's no reason we can't do that. And that little bit of help could then open the floodgates.
Oh, it's big. And you drive off any major highway, you're going to be out of broadband pretty soon.
Oh,
typically,
yeah. And sometimes on the highway.
Yeah, right. Well, sure.
The cables may be running down the highways, but tying them in,
the house,
to
so you can see from
right.
there. It doesn't have
Right.
anything.
And that's something we've done as a state, is we've put money into broadband, but we haven't put money into measurable actually outcomes. So we've given corporations millions and millions of dollars to lay cable, but not counted how many businesses, how many communities, how many homes now have internet. And that's something that we need to make sure that our investments are prudent and reasonable and actually result in results for our communities and people, and we haven't been doing that.
We could go hours on that topic, being someone who started a technology company in West Virginia. I can tell you,
Well,
and have seen things through the years.
So you could probably vouch for the fact that if broadband were readily available in communities, it would make it much easier for those communities to attract people who can work from home, run small businesses, entrepreneurs, or even tech companies.
It's equivalent to electricity in the 30s.
Right.
I mean, it's where it is now.
Right.
Kind of flipping the tables, because you're out, you're hearing from them. What's something you'd like for people to know? Because we are a full circle program, and we try to engage folks. We've got questions and things, and this is all riddled with what our community wants to know from you and other candidates.
Right.
But let's flip that a little bit. What is it that you would like for people to understand that a state senator can't do X, Y, or Z, right? I mean, I think sometimes we see where people ask just unreasonable questions of candidates. Have you heard any of that? Is there something you just like from an education standpoint for us to understand as citizens, here's the kind of things that really I can't affect that you've asked me to do?
Well, I haven't run into that a lot. I do think sometimes there's certain issues that are going to be really hard to fix at the state level that we are going to need federal government. So those are some of the largest, healthcare issues as far as could every person in the state have affordable, accessible, high-quality healthcare. That would be one of my personal greatest dreams. It's going to be really hard to make that happen at the state level without federal leadership. So sometimes, but there are things at a state level we can do to improve it. We just can't fix it. We can fix PEIA. We can make sure that we can support our health departments better. We can support a lot of things at the state level, but some things are federal and some things are city level. But I think that the state government is very powerful in impacting people's daily lives. So.
Well, kind of continuing on that theme, that the Republic is not a spectator sport, right?
Absolutely.
So what, from your perspective, and looking forward, and if you're fortunate enough to win this election and be our representative or our state senator, what's the single most important thing you can ask of the citizens of Taylor County and beyond, really across your entire district, to help you be successful in that role?
To help me be successful in the Senate, I would ask that people stay involved, get involved. Learn about the issues, learn about what the legislature is doing, what your legislators are doing, communicate with them. I expect to be very in touch with my constituents when I'm elected. I will do everything possible to stay accessible and to find out what their issues are. Because when citizens reach out to their legislators, they should get a good response. That's part of our role as a public servant.
Servant. Yes,
servant. The magic word, public servant, which I think most of our legislators have forgotten or never understood that was their role. So I will be having regular town halls, Facebook Lives. I'll be accessible via email and phone calls. And I would ask everyone to talk to me, tell me what the problems are, tell me what you need that you're not getting, because that's what asking that question from people, what they're concerned about, what they need, what problems they're facing, is how I've been learning what we need, and that's what I will continue to need to know. And all kinds of, sometimes an issue seems very small, that someone will bring up to me a little, it's very obscure or not many people know about it. But that could still be something that by fixing at the legislative level could have a massive impact, even though only a few people know. I spoke to a state trooper not long ago, and I asked him my question about what thing he wanted me to focus on first. And he told me about a program at the state police level that was put in place many years ago, and where they designate, I think it was about 17 or 20 state troopers have special training and expertise in dealing with sex crimes against children. And since there are so few, counties share them. So I was speaking to someone in Preston County, and he had to refer cases to the trooper in Marion County. And his request was just that we have more of them, because there are too many of those cases, and they can't all be handled by the number of troopers. So they do a good job, but they need more help. They need more. And that was just sort of shattering to me, to think that we don't have enough state troopers who are available to deal with the number of sex crimes that are happening against our children. So that I doubt I'll ever hear that again, because you only happen to speak to a state trooper that deals with that if you ask enough people.
Sure.
But those are the kind of things that we could absolutely fix that in a heartbeat at the legislative level. That's simply adding state troopers at that level, and adding funding and investing in that, so that we, there should never be a crime against a child that we don't have enough resources to rapidly and effectively and aggressively solve that problem.
So this kind of issue highlights that public service is hard. I mean, why? Why are you facing this challenge? Why are you going into public service here?
I think probably it boils down to, I guess my role in life has been to solve problems, and I've sort of stepped up to fulfill a need when I found it. And I like solving problems. And I learned in December that no one else was stepping up to run in this race against the 12-year incumbent, who I'm not satisfied with how he's led our state or served our people. And so I thought, well, this is something I can do. I have, I'm not a career politician. I never dreamed of doing this. Never had the nightmare doing this. But I'm able to do it, so I decided to do it. And once I got into that role and began digging into these problems and meeting people and asking them about their needs, and digging into the legislature and the legislative history and what we've been doing and what our laws are doing and are not doing for our people and what our government is not doing, I realized there are so many problems, but they're solvable. There's not a magic wand that will make everything perfect, in February or March after I take my seat. But these are really, a lot of our problems are very manageable. We can improve things. We can help the people of our state. We absolutely can. And there's some small things we can do that'll make big differences, and there's big things we can do that will make big differences. And I want to help.
That's great. So you mentioned leadership before, and I think many would argue, and several of the folks that we polled, at least in our area, would say that the state is lacking in quality and proactive leadership. What is kind of a mouthful of a question, but what is your leadership philosophy? In regard to how are you staying ahead? How are you staying informed and proactive? And we talked about talking to people, but what's your decision-making process? If you're able to get in there, how is it you vote? How do you make decisions on voting, and how do you make priorities and then measure to make sure you achieve those priorities? I mean, that's a lot of questions in one, but really that whole leadership philosophy. What would you say in that regard?
Well, if I miss a part, remind me.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Yep, sure.
My general approach, I'm a data person. So I'm a scientist by my education, a bachelor's and master's degree in ecology and related fields. So I like data. I like to have information and to make decisions based on sound data. I am also a strategic thinker on how to use resources effectively. I've managed our small business for most of the last 14 years, and managed our family. And those learning to live within a budget, to manage people, to lead people, to motivate people, and to make hard decisions when they have to be made in order to serve your goals. We have a vet hospital, that's our family business. So we're serving our patients, we're serving our clients, and we're serving our community, and we're also serving our employees. And doing all those things while staying financially solvent, and taking care of our own family. That's a lot of needs to balance, but we've managed to do that because we make priorities and we make hard decisions, and we look at budgets and we choose where's the most effective way I can invest this resource? So if I want to, we need to do advertising. Do you put it in the yellow pages, or do you put it in mailers, or do you work on your relationship with your clients and support those clients and provide really excellent service so that they tell their friends? And that's in our business, that's where we focus on. But that's the same thing that we can do at the state level, and that's one of the things that we're watching the legislature for the last couple sessions. I watched it pretty closely, what bills they were being introduced, how they were proceeding, what their priorities were, what things were being paid attention to, and what things are being ignored. It was really eye-opening, and that's definitely a big part of what motivated me to run, was the failure to focus on priorities, to even consider priorities, but to put our energy, our time, and our money in things that are really political gamesmanship. They sound good, but they don't actually work. One thing I talked about a lot, with people on the campaign trail, is this seemingly little thing of work requirements for SNAP benefits. And a few years ago, that was discussed. The legislature came up with a pilot program, which I think it was put out in around 8 counties that had the best employment in the state. And it was an utter failure. That even with counties with very good employment numbers relative, they only, I think 2% or so of people found long-term employment through that program. And we fed fewer people and spent more money to do it. So we spent more money, fed fewer people, almost nobody got a job. And then this last year, the legislature decided to expand that to the whole state. And food banks, of course, get incredible pressure in those counties. They found that in the pilot program too. So that's the kind of thing that it's a good sound bite. People who can work should work. We shouldn't be feeding people if they're not working as hard as you are. It's a good soundbite. It's terrible policy. And I don't think we should allow our state to be run by soundbite or by political games or by things that just sound good. We should be running our state and making decisions using good policy that has good data to back it up and that actually serves the people. And that's the same thing with broadband. You'll hear people say, well, we invested, tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in putting in broadband. How many people did you serve? How many communities now have broadband? How many businesses were able to acquire high-speed internet, and how many new businesses?
And how do you define broadband?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question too.
So if you're fortunate enough to win, and we sit down next election cycle, what would you like to say? These were my accomplishments. This is what I accomplished.
Oh, I would like to be able to say that our people are thriving. I would like to say that our families have the freedom to stay in West Virginia, and that our kids don't have to leave to find good jobs, and that our husbands and wives don't have to go out of state 5 days a week or 20 days a month in order to pay the bills, and we only get to see them a few days a month. I would like to say that our state is thriving and growing.
Great. With your challenger, or with the incumbent currently, you mentioned his leadership. I've got a question for you. What from your perspective would you find would maybe be his biggest successes over his last term, and his failures from your perspective?
Just this last term, or the last 4 years or so.
Sure.
So, well, he succeeded in taking away prevailing wage protection for the working people of the state. That was apparently one of his goals, and he succeeded in that. I would count that as a failure to our people. He succeeded in instituting right to work in the state, to take away unions' ability to effectively organize and damage them. I would also count that as a failure. I've looked pretty closely at his legislative record, and I haven't found things that I would consider successes. So that's sort of a hard question.
Yeah.
I would try and be more gracious about it, but I honestly just don't know of anything. Failures, I think he's failed the working people of our state. I think he's failed the families of our state. He's failed the small businesses of our state, the pets of our state, which is crazy. That's a whole nother issue. So that's why I'm running. If I thought he was a great legislator, I wouldn't be running.
Sure. So as a voter, why, if I'm looking through the ballots and I see, why should I vote for Stephanie Zucker?
Because I care about the people of the state. I have the ability to help. And I will work every day during my entire term as hard as I possibly can to make the state a better place for our kids, for our seniors, for our families, for our working people. And I care.
Great. Stephanie Zucker, thank you. We're going to come back for part 2, so be ready for that. Thank you again, all of Taylor County, and all the questions that you brought in. We'll be covering more of those in part 2.